And it's not my first rodeo.
Wow.
On my first rodeo as a
Oh
commercial.
God, I never want to hear that ever again.
Okay, we're live.
Oh snap! Welcome to From the Ground Up podcast. So
it's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah, I guess we should explain ourselves. We took last week off because we were in North Carolina with family for Easter, and then some other things happened, and then
here we are.
Here we are. So basically, I want to, and I didn't get to talk to you about this yet, but I want to extend the OCIC fundraiser a week.
I was wondering because it is May 1st tomorrow.
Yeah, because I wasn't able to give it the push that I wanted to in the last week, obviously, because all the things that came up last week and just Easter in general. So
yeah, blame Easter. It's all Easter's fault.
Yeah, seriously. So I just wanted to give that some more time because I want to make a YouTube video kind of explaining some of the things, not explaining just that, but introducing it so that the people who watch us for the actual YouTube videos get a chance to buy them as well. And I've been slacking on the video front, so.
Okay, so for another week, you can buy the shirts we're selling on our website, and all of the proceeds benefit the Orient Society.
The Orient Center for Indigo Conservation.
Oh, sorry.
You got to be specific.
True. The OCIC is that.
And so the OCIC, they propagate the eastern indigo snake, which they then release into certain reserves in, I believe it's Georgia and Florida. And I'm going to edit that out with magic.
Yeah.
So the OCIC propagates eastern indigo snakes, and they re-release them into Florida and Georgia. And if you want to learn more about the OCIC, you can listen to our podcast with Michelle Hoffman. She is the director of the OCIC. And so you get an idea of what your money would go towards and all the great work that they're doing. So check out the shirt, Theportcitypythons.com. Other than that, we don't really have anything else going on. Our snakes ate all of their own eggs. So
no, we suspect.
No, I know.
Joe says he's certain. I am the hopeful one. When we left for the weekend last weekend, the hognose started laying eggs, and the novice one in this relationship didn't know she was going to eat them in the 24 hours that we would be gone. So Joe is convinced that she ate all the eggs she laid.
Oh, I'm 100% know for sure she had an egg out and then it's not there. And then next time she went to the bathroom was the weirdest.
Oh, what did it look? Oh, okay. So you didn't tell me that before.
Okay, it looked like paper pulp, like you know what I'm talking about, like pulp, like it was grayish, whitish. It was disgusting, and it smelled really bad, and there was a lot of fruit flies. So, but she definitely had an egg. It looked like it could be fertile, but probably infertile. And I didn't know for sure because I didn't want to disturb her when she was laying, and then we were leaving, and I didn't get a chance to really check on things. But just another year down the drain with the hognose.
Second year down the drain with hognose, and adds to my dislike of them. But other than that, the corns, we put the lay boxes in there today, so hoping for some eggs. The kings have still done jack shit.
Wow.
And that's how I feel about kings. Other than that,
we're using a pine snakes in pre-lay shed, so that's a big one.
I don't even know what to expect from that.
I don't know either. Probably 4 giant eggs and a lot of waiting.
4 scary bitey babies that will come out.
4 that I'll probably keep them all.
Yay.
So we have
so excited for pine snake babies. Okay, so this has been a very long intro.
Yeah, it has.
It was terrible, but we had to do some spring cleaning and catching everyone up. But you want to introduce our guest?
Today's guest is biologist Amanda Hips. Amanda, you may know her as BiophiliaAmanda on Instagram. She does research and work with Gopher Tortoises and what she calls shit bugs, which I'm not sure exactly what that is, but we'll get into that. So we don't know much about tortoises, but we're really going to go for it today. You got it? Go.
Oh. I got it. How long did you think of that before you said it?
All day long?
Were you planning and waiting to say that terrible?
It's a pun. So Amanda, thank you so much for being here. Could you give us a little overview of what you do?
Yes, absolutely. And let me know. I'm sitting outside, so if you hear background noise, I can easily move inside. Let me know if it gets annoying.
Right now.
Okay. Well, so I work with, I'm a grad student at Florida Atlantic University, and I'm studying gopher tortoises, and I'm really concentrating on the animals that live inside of their burrows. So gopher tortoises are a tortoise species here in the southeast coastal range and of the United States. And they dig these long, extensive burrows, and they can be up to 40 feet long. So there's a lot of other species that are using these burrows, and a lot of them are snakes, like I'm sure you know the indigo snake that uses the burrows, and mice and other lizards and frogs and all sorts of things. Birds are another one. And so we kind of threw out this number of over 350 species uses these burrows, but it's a lot. It's hundreds of animals that are using these burrows, but the majority of them are insects. And we don't really concentrate on the insects. We don't really think much about them, but there's a number of them that actually have co-evolved alongside of them. So they're using these burrows for like basically eating the gopher tortoise poop. So I like to call them the housekeeping service. So gopher tortoises are just kind of these, like, stinky animals. They're pooping inside of their house quite often. And so something needs to come in there and clean it, right? So there's a number of insects. There's about 13 that we know of that will eat the poop. And they're also eating other things like other insects, other pest flies, other detritus and things like that. So that's what I'm looking at. We've never really looked at them in Southeast Florida. So they've mostly been studied in North Florida, Central Florida, along the Lake Wales Ridge, but no one's ever really looked at them here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure out what's around here and figure out if we have the same species or potentially maybe there's another species that we haven't discovered yet. So
cool. So we're gonna get deeper on the gopher tortoise stuff, but first, before I get carried away with but before I get carried away with asking about gopher tortoise, how did you get interested in herps, and were you interested in herps right off the bat?
Yeah, I've always sort of been interested in tortoises, but I don't really know how that started. When I was young, I kind of got into reptiles. And so I had adopted a sulcata tortoise at the time, and I still have him. I've had him for a long time. So I don't know. I'm not really sure where it started, but I ended up going to school at University of North Florida, and thought I wanted to go to vet school. So I had kind of framed my whole education towards vet school. And then I started working at the Jacksonville Zoo. I was doing an internship there at the animal hospital, and it was mostly wildlife rehab. So I was seeing a lot of gopher tortoises come in, and most of them were hit by cars. So I was spending a little time in rehabbing these tortoises. We'd rehab and release. And I don't know, I really loved working with the tortoises. It was like one of my favorite animals to work with. And that's when I decided I really wanted to work with them more from an ecological perspective rather than in the hospital. And so I started doing a little bit of research and found out that right at my university, there was a professor there, Dr. Joe Butler, who was studying them. And so I contacted him and I was like, hey, can I come out in the field and join you for a day? And then that's when I realized I didn't want to go to vet school. So it kind of like changed my whole career.
Yeah, you specifically went for the gopher tortoise.
Yeah, I really did. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been interested in herps, and after that, I actually went to Madagascar and I concentrated on snakes there. So I don't know. I've really liked them always. I'm not sure. I've kind of just always liked weird things, like the things that people don't like. So I've always really liked bugs, reptiles. I don't know.
So what did you do in Madagascar? What kind of animals were you looking at?
So I got the opportunity to work with everything there. The main part of my internship was working with reptiles. And so I did my own research project with snakes, and so I was looking at snake species between Nosy Be and Nosy Comba, and just diversity. And then I just got to be a part of other projects where I was also working with chameleons and other reptile species. And I did a little bit of lemur stuff and a little bit of bird stuff, and I got to do a little bit of everything. So it was a really cool opportunity to kind of figure out like what I really enjoyed. So
How long were you there for?
4 months.
So as like a day-to-day, what are you doing in a situation like that?
In Madagascar?
Yeah.
So day to day, we were living in a village, and living in huts, and it was just like 2 huts where it was just a group of people, all kind of doing the same thing. And so we were all basically working on the same projects, and we could choose to do our own if we wanted to. And so that's when I developed the project that I was working on. Day to day, we'd get up in the morning, we'd do birds like first thing, like before light. And then we had like, I think if I remember correctly, there's like 13 different sites and on Nosy Be. And then we'd get up like each day we had a different site that we'd work at. And so first thing it was birds, and then we'd come back, have a quick rice breakfast, and go out and do like active searching for reptiles. And so we were just mostly recording diversity for everything.
So I think people will be mad if we don't ask. So did you find any Sanzinia or ground boas or anything like that?
Yeah, I found several of those. My favorite was the Langaha. I only found 2 of them. So that was like one of the most rare ones.
I'm not sure what that is. Is there a common name?
So I don't know. I think I've always just known them as the Langaha. But it's basically it's a snake, maybe a leaf-nosed snake would be a common name. Okay. So the males and females look different. So the males have just this like long snout nose, and they just look like a stick. So I usually saw them hanging out in the mangroves, and they just looked like part of the mangroves. It was amazing. And the females have like a snout that looks pretty similar to a stick or like a leaf. So yeah, it was really.
I just looked up a picture on Google. It's very interesting snake.
Let's see if we can get it on. So yeah, that's what in the hobby I've seen that as a Madagascar leaf-nosed snake.
Yes. Okay, that's the common name.
Cool.
Yeah. So that was my. I don't know. For me, that was the most exciting. I really loved finding the ground boas too. But yeah.
So were those rare in a sense, or I know you said that they're rare, but were they rare where you were?
Yeah. So unfortunately, we would usually see them in town where people were selling them. So when we went back to town to Nosy Be, it's called Hellville. Normally it was like people just selling them on the streets. So that was like most commonly where I'd see them. But I did see, I think like at the actual location that I was staying, we went to like different sites and different islands. But the main location that I was staying, I think I only saw them like 3 times. But that was like pretty heavily trafficked. Like there was a lot of like people passing through those trails. So
were they selling them for like hides or meat, or what were they selling them for?
I'm truly not sure. I don't think that they ate them.
Doesn't seem like there's a lot of meat on that little thing.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I'm honestly not sure. I'm not sure why they were selling them. But usually I think because it was so touristy, like that was the most touristy part of Madagascar, I kind of assumed that it was for the pet trade, but I could be wrong. I'm really not sure why.
Interesting.
So it could be for food.
Yeah, I mean, are you seeing like, I'm sure you saw all types of animals for sale.
Yeah, I did. We saw a lot of animals for sale. A lot of sea turtle shells and things made out of sea turtle shells. So yeah, that was a kind of sad part of it.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we had our friend Greg, and he he like has these pictures of like all these crazy cockfights and bare knuckle boxing matches in Madagascar and crazy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you exposed
So
to all that?
what's that?
Were you exposed to all
I
that?
actually didn't see very much of the cockfighting or anything. I didn't. But yeah, I was exposed to a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like obviously a pretty big culture shock for,
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
It's so true. My family is in Puerto Rico, and so cockfighting is still a really big thing there. So I feel like it's weird because it's something that I grew up not actually seeing or going to, but like just seeing like these are just big buildings with like cockfighting, and it's just normal. It's like what people do on a Sunday night, you know. And it's really sad to see, but
Yeah, and it's really weird because like we always ask people about that kind of aspect of things, and I mean, as a visitor to someone's country, I think you can't really say anything about their cultural norms. I mean, they're obviously different than ours, and they're living completely different lives than us.
yeah,
It's hard not to, or
It's hard not to judge
you
inside.
feel right.
You feel
You
bad
feel
inside.
like it's wrong. Like cockfighting feels wrong to us, but
Right.
that's because it's not our norm.
We also have giant factory farms with thousands of chickens right next to you. Like
Right,
we do bad
exactly.
stuff too, but it just seems we justify it, I guess, in our own way.
Right. Yeah.
But other than Madagascar, have you done any other traveling?
Not for things like this. Not for like work or internships. No, not really.
But
I have been to like
don't-
Thailand and but I haven't like gone on herping trips.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, you don't really have to travel when you live in Florida, so.
It's so true. I do feel like I live in like just this awesome biodiversity hotspot. So I feel pretty
as far as the research that you're doing, kind of, are you doing radio telemetry, or are you just looking at different burrows? Like, what are you doing exactly?
I wish I was doing radiotelemetry. I'm not. I do know people who are, and some of the work that comes back with that's so interesting. But the work that I'm doing is just mostly exploring burrows and recording any animals that I'm seeing. So I have cameras set up at the burrow entrances, camera traps, and I set them up like 2 meters at the entrance, like in front of the entrance. And so I've gotten a lot of cool things on that. I've gotten some spotted skunks, which are known to use burrows. But I didn't know that they were at one of our field sites. So I have a really urban field site that's it's a greenway surrounded by this residential neighborhood. And there's a lot of people passing through, walking their dogs and running and biking and stuff. And so it's really active. But we found a lot of spotted skunks. We recorded them. Gosh, what else have I found? Found diamondback rattlesnakes and coach whip snakes and box turtles using the burrows. Lizards and so many toads and frogs. So yeah, so that's like one portion of it, and then the other portion is just like setting up insect traps, or like really just going in there and like actively searching for insects and being halfway in, like inside of a burrow. So yeah, it's been like a lot of work and a lot of field work. The field work has been really intense because it's like, you know, I have to try and be out there at different times of day because I don't know when some of these insects, we don't know anything about their natural history or their location, their range. We have no idea. So it's really just like some of them are attracted, you know, visually by the burrows, and some might be attracted just by like the scent of the poop. Or so it's just like hard to just, I had to be creative and like figure out like different traps and like what could work and what couldn't. And so I was like messing, like I would take pantyhose and go around my field site and just look for tortoise poop and like stuff these pantyhose with poop, and kind of toss them back into a burrow, like tie the end outside of the burrow and then like toss the rest back in. And that was really effective, but I was like, you know, that was like a trap that I had to check really frequently because I was worried about, you know, tortoises getting entangled. And in the end, it wasn't an issue. They are really good at just like cleaning out their burrows. And so like anything you put in there is just gone within a few minutes. They're really clean in that way. But yeah, setting up funnel traps. So I would take water bottles and like set up a funnel so that insects could just like crawl in and fall in. I set up a Coyote Wily inspired trap where I took a like a shoebox, like a plastic shoebox, and then this plastic paneling, and I would create like the shape of a burrow with it. And so it's just like blacked out and it looked like a burrow. And then it was placed over this box. And so like when a fly or a beetle would fly into it, it would fall in, like it would be a slit open at the bottom. So it'd like fly in and like fall in. If you're thinking of Wile E. Coyote, I don't know if you watched the cartoon.
I never watched that.
You did? Okay. So that's like a bad analogy. But basically it's just like painting this like scene on a wall and like trapping something. So that was the idea behind it.
And what are you hoping to gain from finding the insects that are feasting on the poop?
Yeah, well, so I'm really just wanting to know what's here. So I want to know if the same species are here that are potentially in North Florida or in Georgia, or in Central Florida. So I'm just wondering what's here. Mostly I'm just doing a general survey just to find out. And then also what kind of habitats are they in. So right now I'm working in scrub and flatwoods, and I have 3 scrub and 3 flatwood sites. So I'm just trying to figure out, do they prefer one site over another? And right now, I think what I'm finding is that the majority of them are in scrub habitats. They really like that high, dry land. Yeah, so really just get a better idea of their natural history. Where are they? What do they prefer? Does it need to be fire managed, or like what kind of management do they need?
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, as a graduate student, is most of your research very self-directed? Do you kind of have free reign of like what and when and how and all the kind of things you're going through?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky in the sense that my advisor's been very hands-off, and so that's really great. In the sense, like, I can create, like, he's been a great, like, really great at guiding me into like figuring out what I want to do with it. But yeah, a lot of it's just been like, I've just made this up and kind of just taken it and run with it. So, yeah.
And do you have others who work with you? Because I can only imagine, like, after you're doing all that field work, then you have to take it and actually like
you
look
want
at
someone
little
to dissect
micro.
The shit.
Oh my God.
You gotta go look under these are insects.
Yeah, I love you for bringing this up, because this has been like the nightmare of the project. So I'm like, the field work was so much fun, and I've gone out and I've like surveyed a total of, I don't know, 150 burrows and collected so many insects from each of them. And so I'm like, I have hundreds of insects to identify. And so it's like all of a sudden, like overnight, I'm having to be this like expert entomologist in like all of these types of different insects. And so that's the part that's really frustrating. Yeah, I'm getting help from people. I do have someone that's helping me identify ants. And so I'm looking for someone to help me with mites. That's been like a really hard one, because I think I have several different species of mites. But yeah, it's like, that's been really hard. Like now I'm mostly just working in the lab and like looking under microscopes at these insects, and trying to figure out, like, some of it's identifying, distinguishing from 2 different species of beetles. So one is literally measuring the length of the spine on the back leg. And that's the only way that I can distinguish it from another species. Yeah. And it's a 2 millimeter beetle, so you can only imagine how big that spine is. So it's really frustrating. It's been a lot of work. Like, I've really enjoyed it and I've learned a lot, but it does feel like I'm like kind of just, I don't know, kind of like trying really hard to like figure this out on my own. But people have been really helpful, and I have gotten help from people on a lot of stuff. So.
And are the gopher tortoises, do they seem to benefit from these bugs in any way?
Yeah, we think so.
They have a clean house.
Yeah, clean up the house. So we do think that it's something that hasn't been studied, but kind of like a lot of dung beetles that we already know about, we do think that they're reducing parasite loads. So one study has shown that the poop inside of burrows, because this is where all of those insects are found, is only within the burrows. But that poop is actually just being cleaned out quicker and disappearing a lot faster than poop found outside of the burrow. So like when we find them on a trail outside, it's not, getting cleaned up as quickly. So yeah, so we do think that there's, potentially reducing parasites for them.
Okay, a silly but weird
Oh,
question.
no.
You were walking out in the world and you I'm so embarrassed for this thought. You saw poop. Can you identify that it's do you know what different animals' poops look like now? Can you identify it?
I feel like for the poop in my area, I feel like I've gotten really good at it. But I feel like when I travel and I'm just like, what kind of poop is this? I'm but now I take an interest in it. Now I'm just like, oh, okay, we had an opossum poop in our yard and I knew it was a possum poop, but now I'm just looking at it and I'm like, there's a rainbow scarab beetle on this poop. And this is not something I would have ever really thought to look at before, but it was really neat. It was just this beautiful green rainbow scarab beetle on this really smelly poop, but it was just amazing.
So how did you know it was an opossum poop?
What's that?
How did you know that?
You have to taste it.
So we actually caught it in a trap, and so that's how I knew it was, because we had to release it. But yeah, so I did know it was an opossum. But I've been able to start picking up on the scatology. Yeah.
So while we're on the subject, gopher, they essentially eat mostly vegetation, right?
Yes, yeah, mostly vegetation. I do catch them. Occasionally people have caught them eating carcasses. I do see them eating dog poop quite frequently. They do eat bones. We find bones in their poop pretty often, especially for the females and the young tortoises. They need that calcium. So yeah, but mostly just grazing on grasses and low shrubbery, low vegetation.
Is there anything like you had mentioned? I can imagine a mother who's trying to calcify eggs, or a mom that needs to put on weight. Do they more frequently eat, protein and meat?
So I don't know who's eating protein, and I'm not sure that anyone studied that, and I could be wrong about it. It might have been studied in a different species of tortoise, because it's not uncommon for tortoises to do that. But yeah, I'm not sure. We do know, or what we're finding, and this is an ongoing project that my advisor is working on, is that some, especially we're seeing with the females and the young ones, we've x-rayed them to see what kind of calcium deposits they have in their gut. And so that's one thing that we've picked up on, is it seems to be pretty common in females and juveniles.
And these are big burrows. Could you give an idea of how big a burrow is, and how does a tiny gopher tortoise dig a giant burrow?
So I'm still every time I've just watched them dig, I'm just how do they just do this? It's it'll take them a day to dig out a brand new burrow, just a day. And they're kind of always working on it. And so, over time it gets deeper and deeper. But yeah, so they, gopher tortoises have these shovel-like hands. So it's really flat and really broad. And that's even compared to other North American tortoise species. So the desert tortoise, they are burrow diggers, but the gopher tortoise just has, it's more tied to their burrows. And so they are sort of better diggers. But yeah, so these burrows can get up to 40 feet, sometimes longer. I have a camera scope that I use to send down these burrows, and I'll measure them. And I can also just get video or a glimpse of what's going on inside or other animals in there. And so a lot of times it's longer than my scope. My scope goes up to, I think, 30 feet. And sometimes they're shorter, sometimes they're only 20. But yeah, it's just amazing to see them, 40 feet long or more.
Give hope to all the little kids trying to dig to China.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you just Google pictures of people doing relocations, and they have to for these relocations, when they have to relocate a tortoise from one site to another, they have to dig them out of these burrows. And so they'll use this like major equipment to like have to dig this like massive burrow up, and so you can see people just like standing in ground, and like it's just like way over, like the surface is like way over their head. So they get pretty deep. And
Wow.
that does depend on like the water table. So in South Florida, they might not be like getting as deep, as maybe potentially the ones in North Florida, or like on the Lake Wales Ridge and things like that. But yeah, they do get really deep. Not only
Are you taking temperatures of these? Like how, what would the temperature be 40 feet underground or whatever?
Yeah, so it varies. I haven't been taking temperature, but it does vary depending on location. But it doesn't really change more than like, I feel like it was like 0.2 degrees Celsius or something. So like in the region that they're in, it's like extremely stable. So it really doesn't fluctuate very much. So in the winter and the summer, like they're the same temperature that's not necessarily true, but it changes, but like it really doesn't change like very much within a couple of days or a day or whatever, or even season to season. So yeah, it's really stable.
Will a tortoise dig another burrow? Like what would be a reason, or do they usually stick to one, or they dig multiple?
They generally do have several. So they have usually at least 2 burrows that they go back and forth. And so I don't know, I like to think of it as like a summer home and a winter home, but it's probably has to do with rain and like weather. So I do think, I'm not really sure, we're not really sure why they have multiple ones, but they do seem to like, dig a couple. But they're always in that area in their lifetime. So they're not really like at one site. They're not really like moving to another site, or like, they stay in one area their entire life. So they know the other tortoises around them very well.
And you mentioned relocating before. So are they like, something like a box turtle that if you take them out of their home range, they get confused and are essentially looking for their home range the whole time? Or do they relocate decently?
No, it's so just like a box turtle. It's, relocation's really challenging, and I think we've gotten pretty far about like how we're trying to work on that. But yeah, if you just pick them up and put them in another location, they're gonna look for home. They're gonna get really confused and like try to look for their home range. And then in the end, like they're probably crossing streets to get back home, and a lot of times that just means a death sentence for them.
Is there anything that happens to avoid, new construction going over, gopher tortoise habitat?
To avoid new construction, or to
Right.
yeah, so now it's become a lot harder for people. Like previously people could actually build on top of burrows, so they could literally just close them in, and then tortoises can live underground for a long time with very little oxygen and food, and so it could take them, potentially it could take them months to die just and just getting built on. But that's not legal anymore, and so now you do have to have a permit if you want to get them relocated. So if a builder is going to come in, they do have to like apply for permits, and it's expensive. So yeah, it's like we've come a long way since then.
And it still seems like they get the short end of the stick, though.
It does. It really does. Especially in South Florida, I feel like it's hard to see a lot of that really beautiful scrub habitat being paved over, and it seems like a lot of those tortoises are being moved up to North Florida. So yeah, it's kind of hard to see that happening in Florida.
What do you guys do to aid in the relocation, to reduce the confusion and like trying to get back home?
So now they will do like what's called a soft release. And so they have, they set up these pens out in this location where they want them to live. And there's a lot more that goes into it. I'm just giving like a brief, like what I know. I don't really know the details. Like I know that, they have to be careful about like how many tortoises there are per acre. And I think they recommend like 1 tortoise per acre, maybe 1 tortoise every 2 acres. I could be wrong on that, but it's something like they need a lot of space.
Right.
So now they do a soft release, and so they'll build a pen, and they kind of dig a starter burrow for the tortoise, and kind of hope that the tortoise will use that starter burrow. And they have to leave them in this pen for, like, I think 2 years before they can pull the pen up, and hope that it stays. So it's basically just, it takes them quite a bit of time for them to just be able to call a space home and get used to it.
Yeah, 2 years is crazy.
Yeah, and I think like they've done studies where like they started at 6 months and then they went up to like a year and then 2 years and then 3 years. And I think that they said that like 2 years was a good amount of time. But anything less than that, like they weren't really well adapted. It wasn't home yet for them. So they tried to leave.
And I mean, are they like feeding them, or are they growing certain vegetation within their pen?
I think they're growing vegetation within the pen, and you know, they're fine eating just grasses and things like that. So I think they make sure, you know, wherever they set the pen up, I think that they make sure there's good vegetation.
And you had mentioned before spotted skunks, and I mean, are those predators to the gopher tortoise? Can they get in there? And
they do use them, and I could, you know, I don't know if they're eating eggs or hatchlings. It's possible. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of predators for the gopher tortoise. So like some other animals that use the burrows are raccoons. Snakes would eat the eggs or the hatchlings. There's a number. Coyotes, they'll actually use the burrows, and so they will dig out. They'll use the gopher tortoise as like a starter burrow, and then they'll dig it out, make it larger for their den. But they do dig up nests, and they will eat hatchlings. Bobcats are another one. So yeah, there's a number. They have a rough life to start, and it really takes them, you know, once hatchlings are here, in South Florida, it takes them about 7 years to mature. And like at that point, yeah. Well, so in North Florida, like in the northern part of the range, it can take them up to 20. And so that whole time, like up until 20 years, like they're vulnerable to predation. And so like in South Florida, like they're maturing so much faster, you know, and that's awesome. But like, you know, either way, they still have the same predators. And so
yeah,
they're really vulnerable for a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how long like most species of turtles and tortoises take to get to maturity, and that's why, you know, to combine it with the fact that they're generally pretty slow moving and easy to catch, and prone to crossing the road and whatnot, like they're kind of screwed. Yeah, how do you live, you know, if you're a bog turtle or something, how do you live the 20 years to get to maturity?
No kidding. You gotta dodge a lot of dangerous stuff. And then even as adults, like then there's that chance of crossing a road.
Yeah, so obviously you're in a place where you said is kind of has heavy foot traffic in it. So how does that affect, I mean, do they live decently, you know, with all the traffic going on?
I think they do. This is just one of my field sites, but it's a greenway, and so this is a space where when they started building a residential neighborhood around it, they started, instead of this was at a time where they actually could have built over the gopher tortoises. So instead of doing that, they did create a greenway specifically for the tortoises. And so this was like previously cow pasture and like strawberry plantation, and so they completely you know, redid the habitat and made it suitable for gopher tortoises. So the only issue with it is like the tortoises are pretty well adapted to people there. And it's really interesting to see because a lot of my other field sites, like they very rarely see people. And so they're gone in an instant. Like they're really hard to catch because they're usually just like near a burrow and like they see you coming and they're just inside. But the ones at this site at the Greenway are just like fine with people. They'll just be grazing while people are walking by. But the one issue is that it's really difficult to do prescribed burning. And so that's really important for gopher tortoise habitat because it really opens up the canopy and allows the sunlight to come in and hit the forest floor and like allows their vegetation, their food sources to grow and allows for these like sunlit nesting areas. So they really rely on that fire. So this is because it's like surrounded by homes, it's really hard to burn. And so it hasn't been burned. It's been, I think, 12 years since it's been burned. And so now the tortoises are sort of just having to like move out of the middle of the site because it's like there's so much growing within. And so they're having to move out to these open sites, which is the trail. And so that's where they're digging their burrows, and they're kind of losing space that way. And so they're, you know, most tortoises at most sites will have a couple burrows, but these tortoises are fighting over burrows. And so there's a lot of musical chairs going on where if a tortoise leaves, like another tortoise might come in and steal that burrow because it's a place to live. So that's one issue that we see with that site.
And they really want to be solitary, or do they ever interact?
They do. So what's really interesting, and this is like something that I love to tell people, is there was one study that was done with gopher tortoises, and they found that they're actually a lot more social than we had ever thought. So they do prefer to have their own burrow and their own space and like live alone. But they will go visit other tortoises. So they'll, especially the females will, when they did radio tracking, they found that females would go visit the same females like every so often, like every day, maybe every couple days. But it was the same ones. And so there might be a female that lives right next door that they potentially don't like, but for whatever reason, they're not visiting. But they're just visiting the same one. So there's sort of like these like cliques, like I like to call it like high school like girl cliques. And the males are just visiting, mostly just visiting females. They don't really have any, they're not visiting other males. If they are, it's because they want to combat. But yeah, it's really interesting to see like the females do have this like social structure.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because in snakes, our males are always the roamers and the females just kind of chill out. But the fact that they are hanging out with each other, and it's something that has happened 2 weeks in a row on the podcast, because rattlesnakes apparently bond, meaning like they'll find the same pair hanging out with each other.
That's so amazing. Yeah, I love like just learning about social behavior in reptiles, because I think we're just now learning so much about them. So.
We don't give them
girls are cliquey across a lot of different species.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you don't think that that would help them in any way.
Right. Yeah. What is the benefit? Yeah.
Everybody needs a friend, and the males aren't worth anything but mating season.
Wow.
Exactly.
So male combat, what is that like?
Yeah. That's another thing that I get to see really often at this urban site, because they just don't seem to care there. They'll fight in front of people. So males are fighting over females. They're fighting over territory. And so they fight with what's called a gular scute or a gular horn. And so like on their belly, on the like bottom of their shell, they have a projection from their shell that comes out like under their chin. And so that's what they're fighting with. It's really interesting to see because they are just like trying to flip each other over. So a lot of the videos that you often see passed around on social media where tortoises are like upside down and another tortoise comes to rescue it, it's usually because they're combating. And so they're like, we see that too, where they'll be combating and one male will flip another one over and then he'll flip him back over. I'm not really sure why, but they'll flip him back over, I think, just so that they can keep fighting. So it's really interesting to see the combating. I've caught that on camera traps a lot too. And then pretty soon after, you'll see a female come by, and and that's how mating happens. So
is that like, what do you call it? The gular, what's the right word for it?
The gular scute or gular horn.
Yeah. Is it bigger on the males for that purpose?
Yeah. So on the males, it is longer. The females do use it. I've had females actually use it on me. I have some pretty grumpy females that will defend their burrows or their territory. But the males are, it's huge on the males. It tends to be longer.
So my thought would be that typically what a turtle or tortoise would do would just hide in its shell, but you have animals that are actually interactive enough to try to combat you physically?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have this one female tortoise. We call her Grumpy Gertrude. She's like the grumpiest lady. Every time she sees us, so her burrow initially used to be at the entrance of our field site. And so when we come in, it's like a fenced in site. She would see us and like she would immediately like come out of her burrow and just like pop up her head and be like, what are you doing here? If you got closer, she'd be coming out towards you and just like bobbing. So one defense that they have is bobbing their head. So like that's how they communicate. And that's, yeah, she would come out to just bob her head and be like, get off my property. So anytime I'm working at her burrow and I'm like trying to look for insects, she's attacked me. She's like physically like tried to push me away. And then there's like other days where she's just completely chill and she's just like watching me do it. And so I'm not really sure what spurs that. I'm not really sure like why sometimes she's okay. And then the next day she's just like, go, I've had enough. Yeah, I don't know. She's also really curious. Like she'll come out and she'll bob her head and then she'll like check out all my equipment. And so she's just at the same time, she's like kind of like get away, but also I'm really curious about what you're doing. So
Okay.
we have a lot of tortoises that are curious. So
Yeah, that's crazy because,
yeah.
I mean, how long have people been researching these particular burrows? And like, was there a point where they're kind of like socialized at this point? Is this why they're so,
Yeah,
outgoing?
so I think so. I think at this, so my advisor's been working at this field site since it started. So like actually since they created the greenway for the tortoises to be relocated there, he started, and that was like 20 years ago. So he's been working with them for a long time. And so now I think like he's on a first name basis with them and he can like look at their number and just know who it is. And there's over 100 tortoises at the site. And I feel like they're just all used to people. And I think a lot of it is because he's there all the time working with them. So
is that number, I mean, much higher than usual as far as, because it's been protected or you guys have been working there?
you mean the like the number of
100 individuals sounds like a lot for an animal that isn't very
concentrated
plentiful.
100. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's a lot of animals for the amount of acres it is. I think it was like 9, I don't remember. 22 acres or something. I could be completely wrong on this. I think I am wrong.
But if they originally wanted 1 to 2 acres just for one animal, 100 sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's a ton. It's a lot. And the crazy thing is that they are producing. We see juveniles quite frequently that we have never seen before. And considering we're out there all the time, we know the population pretty well. And so like now it's like, okay, here's a new one that we haven't seen. So they are producing. And there are tunnels that connect them to others. So the greenway is actually really long, but we only work in a small section of it with one population of tortoises, but it keeps going. And there's other parts of the greenway. And so right now we work in this one section and there's like a tunnel that connects them to another greenway so that they can just pass underneath the road. They don't tend to use it very much, but I assume that some might be. And maybe they're, going back and forth that way and meeting other tortoises. And so yeah, it's a lot of tortoises, and that's like another issue. It's not normal, and you wouldn't generally see that in nature. Yeah, that has to do with the relocation.
So does that hinder you in any way as far as the amount, and then also like the how outgoing they are? I mean, do you think that affects behavior?
It definitely. I'm so sure it affects behavior because I've had, like I said, I've had 6 field sites, and this is the only site where I've seen some of these types of behaviors. And even when I have the camera set up, like this is pretty unusual. There's a lot of combating, a lot of fighting, but also there's a lot of females hanging out together. There's a lot of like weird love triangles. So you'll see like on the camera traps, I've just caught so many different things like where, males will be courting. This is normal. Males will court females for days, if not, sometimes it seems like a month. It goes on for a long time, and maybe it's just continual. Maybe they have been mating, and in South Florida, they can mate year round because it's so warm. But it's interesting to see like how many males, like there'll be like 3 males that are after this female, and there have been times where we've pulled out multiple males. I think we had in one burrow we had 5 tortoises. There's 2 females and 3 males in one burrow, and so that was really interesting. And I've never seen that before. Like with the other field sites that I've worked at, I've never seen that kind of behavior. So I think it can be normal. It's like interesting because I know someone else who's been working with behavior stuff and mating. And I do think that they've also observed some of this, but it just doesn't seem quite as common. So I don't know. There's just a lot of competition at this site.
And do males typically just go with one female, or will they mate with multiple females?
They mate with multiple. They will mate with multiple. We don't know very much about the hierarchy or like, who's really mating with who. But the females do tend to maybe mate with several males every year. But it tends to be like the same males. And so there's like males that are sort of like the main dominant males at the site, and there might be 1 or 2 of them, but they'll be the dominant males, and so those tend to be the males that get a lot of the females.
Sounds like similar to someone.
Sounds like animals.
Animals too, yeah. Most outgoing one and dominant one lots of times gets the...
I don't know about that, but
it definitely happens.
Sure. So no, it definitely does. But have you been able to see, females laying eggs or?
Yeah, that's I've definitely observed females nesting. I try to not get too close, and if I see it, I don't really stick around. But yeah, I've seen them nesting. My undergrad research was actually on reproductive success, so I was counting nests. So that was really interesting. But I found, I was counting nests and then hatching them and making sure that they actually survived.
Oh, so you're actually collecting the eggs?
You said an undergrad.
Is the wind affecting?
No,
can you hear wind? Okay.
That's not true. I'm saying, but even the work you're doing now, are you collecting eggs and incubating them?
Oh no, I actually didn't. I never did that. I was just they lay their nest right in front of the burrow on it's called the apron. It's like this mound of dirt from when they dig out the burrow, and so that's where they nest. And so I was really just I have to go in with a survey flag stick. It's like a thin piece of metal, and gently, very gently, just search for these nests. And basically, if you hear a tiny little click, almost like a rock or something, then that's a nest. And so then I can dig it up, figure out how many there are, and then put a nest protector on it. And so that's the only way to see them. It's not like sea turtles where you're like, oh, there's tracks. It doesn't really work that way. So I have to, go in and actively search for them and dig them up and figure out where they are. And then I just put a nest protector on it because there's a lot of things that get to them, especially raccoons. So
what is the typical clutch style? As we say clutch for snakes. I don't know if it's the same across the board, but yeah, what's the typical clutch size?
So a typical clutch size is probably generally around 5 eggs. It can range from 4 to 9. It can get bigger. It can be up to 12. I've never seen more than 9 eggs. Generally,
not a lot.
Yeah, no, it's not at all. So yeah, the average is 5.
And what is a nest protector made out of?
So it's this mesh basket. So basically just take mesh wire and create just a basket that's this tall and set it right over the nest and then put fence stakes in it. And it's not that effective. It does work. It has worked, but I think that in some locations where people are using the nest protectors, raccoons have actually learned that means that there's a nest, and that's something that they can actually dig up. So it's not really very good at protecting.
And why do they do it at the front of that seems like the least,
right?
That's the place you would last want to put your eggs.
Yeah, I agree. So it's not always there. Sometimes it's they'll find just a sandy patch of sand, but it's so hard for them to find it, especially if it's not scrubby habitats is great because scrub, it's all sand. and very little vegetation. And so there's a lot of sandy patches and scrub. But if you're out in the flatwoods habitat, which is like more like either longleaf pine or slash pine, things like that, and there's a lot of ground cover also. And so it's not quite as sandy, and it's like harder to find those open sandy patches, and that's what they need. So that's generally where they get it, is like the apron.
And
so,
how long do they typically take to hatch?
Oh, I think it takes like 2 months for them to hatch, if I remember correctly. I remember just doing it like in one summer season. So it was like done by fall.
So I guess the mothers are not trying to get in there once they've laid their eggs. I guess, once you have the nest protector, I was thinking, oh, would the moms get mad or like want to be able to
protect their eggs and
protect, right? But I guess they don't care once they've already raised.
There's really, generally we say that there isn't really any nest protection, but we have observed some females that have like exhibited nest protection, and so they have been really defensive. I can only say that it was that I saw it with one tortoise at UNF when I worked in Jacksonville, Florida. There was one female tortoise that was like very protective of her nest, and to the point where she was biting, and she wasn't a bitey female without her nest. Before that, she wasn't bitey, she wasn't defensive, she was pretty shy. But when she had her nest, she was really protective. So anytime we came by, she was biting.
Seems like there's a wide range of personalities and behaviors.
For sure. Yeah, if there's anything I've learned working with them, it's that they do definitely have a wide range of personality.
And we're something that we are not supposed to prescribe, human feelings on or personality on, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, there's times where I understand that, like, I kind of agree, but I also feel like there's a point too where it's kind of like almost dangerous to not, because I do feel like they definitely do have personality. And, anyone who works closely with an animal, and I know that you do, we do, like, there's definitely some personality there. So
there's a lot of variance between individuals of the same species.
Yes.
Whether in the wild or whether in captivity.
Exactly.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that to some extent, because like you were talking about earlier, it's like you've only noticed some of these social behaviors in that one site that has 100. So it kind of, leads you to these more questions like, oh, is it this? Could it be this? And so I think if you completely negated their personalities and their behaviors, then it wouldn't lead you to these other questions.
Absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe you'll.
Yeah. And it seems like they are changing their behavior based on what must work in their small community. Like,
for sure. Yeah. Like they have to be defensive and in the greenway because they have to fight for a burrow or food or mates, and so it's
just a more competitive environment, I suppose.
Yeah. But again, like not all of them are. Some of them are just like, okay, I guess I'm just going to sleep outside tonight.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I thought they would lay their eggs inside.
You would think that they'd leave it right at the end, but I guess.
They need sun. They have to have like that sunny spot. And so another thing too is, the temperature, their temperature sex dependent. So I don't know. They do need the sun.
It has to be outside.
So have you actually, I don't know if you can tell sex from babies, but I'm assuming you have seen babies coming out of the nest, correct?
Yeah, I have. It's like such a cool experience.
And can you sex them right off the bat, right out of the egg, basically?
I didn't. I'm sure that there are ways. You can't tell just by looking at them. So I think you probably have to use a probe or something, but that wasn't something that I did. So, and I don't, even now when we see juveniles at our field site, sometimes the males will show us if it's a male. Sometimes they'll flash us. And so that's how we can tell if they're too young to actually sex, but otherwise we really don't try. So.
And are you seeing, as far as the population goes, generally, it's stable in the areas that you're working at?
Yeah, it's been really stable. And that's the only area that we've actually been really truly looking at population. estimates and following it. And so, but yeah, it's been stable for the greenway.
And what is
So-
the typical range for the gopher tortoise in general?
Of age?
No, range as far as their habitat and everything.
How much like space? That's a really good
Well,
question.
not like individual, but as far as because obviously they're throughout Florida and they go up to Georgia as well, correct?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So yes, they go into Georgia and Alabama. They're in a really small part in South Carolina, and just very small location in Louisiana, Mississippi. So the largest like population is Florida. We have the most gopher tortoises in Florida. But yeah.
And do you think that's just because the weather allows them to reproduce more often?
I'm not sure. I don't know that that's the answer. I don't think so. I think we're just a really big state, and so that's probably some of it. And in South Carolina, they're only a small portion because it's really cold, and so they don't go into like northern South Carolina or anything. Yeah, I think it's just because Florida's a big state and we have, some habitat that's protected now, and they're working towards keeping it off the endangered species list. So.
And I hear it all the time said, as far as the gopher tortoise goes, that it's a keystone species. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Keystone species is, I feel like I'm so bad at like describing this, but I like to say, it gets its name from, if you think of the keystone in a doorway, that's like holding all of the bricks together. And so if you remove that keystone, everything crumbles. That like doorway will crumble. So basically, it's an animal that if you remove it from the ecosystem is going to be drastically different. And so it really depends on, it doesn't necessarily depend on like the amount of gopher tortoises in the ecosystem either. Like it can be a pretty small population of whatever keystone species it is, and it has an impact on the ecosystem. I tend to like be on, the side of, I think that we tend to use keystone pretty freely with a lot of animals. And I think that everything has some significance in the ecosystem. And so, yeah, I think gopher tortoises are a keystone species and they are called keystone. But I also feel that everything has some significance, and protecting a keystone can protect a lot of other species. That is the benefit there.
Of having that like title of keystone, it kind of
Right.
Brings awareness. But I agree, it's like, what are the boundaries of a keystone?
Right,
Everything's
important.
Right. Well, everything does something.
Exactly. Yeah, everything. If it's here, it
lowest
deserves
below.
something.
Yeah.
Right.
So then what?
Even your ship beetles.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. If we don't know, it's just because we haven't figured it out yet. So.
Right. And it seems like obviously they are in a similar situation as far as like the indigo stuff that we've talked about before, and especially with like the prescribed burns and stuff like that. So
yes,
I mean, in this modern day and age with so much new construction and stuff going on, and obviously you can't burn it. I mean, what are you supposed to do as far as
So there are some other options that aren't really as effective, but what they do now is they mow it. So it's basically taking just like this, I like, pardon me, because I don't know the equipment, like I don't really know what they're called, but it's a mower, but it like goes in and like mows the habitat, the vegetation. So it kind of clears out like a lot of the understory that's like growing within, and so it like frees up some space for the gopher tortoises to be able to like move back into the territory, back into the site. Whereas like right now, as I mentioned before, they're just like getting pushed out to the trails. So all of this like space in between is like kind of wasted. So they can go in and like mow that area and like open it back up so that they can go back in and dig burrows and like have sunlight hitting the floor. So that's an option, but it's not really very effective. It's, fire is definitely the most ideal. So.
And
Yeah.
so that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's something. It's definitely something, but we're working on it. They did get a prescription to burn a couple of years ago, and everybody was really excited about it. But the prescription ended up expiring because you have to get it done within a year, and then they have to reevaluate it a year later. So it expired because they could never really get the weather just right, and so the weather conditions have to be perfect, especially when you're working near homes. And so, you know, it's like it would have to be a perfect day when everybody's available and free to do a burn. And so that was really hard to figure out. And so the prescription ended up expiring, but they're working on a new one. I'm not sure if they're going to actually prescribe, though. I'm not sure if it's going to work out this time.
To get that approval.
What's that?
Who do you go through to get that approval to do it?
What do we go through?
Yeah, like what
I
organization?
don't know. I'm honestly not sure. I wasn't part of like that whole process, and it's interesting to hear my advisor talk about it because it is something that I know he's been working on for like years, and you know, trying to go back and forth between, you know, I think like county and state, and I'm not really sure who's involved in everything, but it is county property, and so you know, and a lot of it's just trying to get the locals on board because, you know, this is their home, and a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people are very against prescribed burns because they really don't understand the point. And it seems, you know, and I understand it like does seem to be destructive. And
you're gonna light my backyard up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not how people in Florida talk.
Northern Florida, maybe.
Yeah, we have some. But it's something that I understand, and so it's something that we do have to like work with educating the public to get them on board because they are, you know, they are a part of it. So
yeah, ultimately, I guess it has to be. They need to be on board in order for you guys to go. But Brian Holt said that burn permits are usually through the State Forestry Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
So there you go. Hit them up if you want to burn some stuff.
Okay, I wanted to switch gears. Did you have a question on that?
No.
So switching gears, so how long is your graduate study program? Like, this seems like something you could do like forever. Your advisor's been doing
does feel like it. That's basically what I'm doing. So technically, it's like a 2-year program. A lot of people do take 3 years, and I'm on that 3-year route. So yeah, generally a 2-year program for a master's thesis.
How far into it are you?
I'm finishing up. I'm like really hoping to be done this summer. So now I'm like kind of on the job hunt and like looking out for jobs and starting applications. But right now I'm really just writing my thesis and working on insect IDs. And I have like, I think the majority of insects that I could ID myself. Now it's just a matter of trying to find like somebody that's good with mites and things like that. It's really hard to identify mites, but
I didn't even know that. They just look like little black dots.
They are. It's so frustrating. I mean, like once you get them under microscope, I'm like, okay, these are definitely different. They look so different. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like, it's frustrating trying to be like an expert in all of these different
fields.
insects.
Right. I mean, that's a whole separate different thing. I feel like that you could have a thesis just on identifying, you know, not just finding them and saying how they affect the gophers and everything, but just identifying all of them is a whole separate thing.
It is, yeah, it is. Thank you for acknowledging that. I feel like it's so hard to explain this to like my family. That's like, when are you gonna finish? And I'm like, I don't know. Stop asking that question.
You just say, look at these bugs. Do you see a difference between them? Because
exactly.
Are you also finding these mites on the gophers as well? Are there parasites that they're?
Yeah. So yeah, there's actually a tick called the Gopher Tortoise tick. And I think it's a tick. I don't know very much about it, but I have found them just in the burrows without actually being on the tortoise. They kind of like are in the soil. And it's not something that's really an issue for them. Like it's okay if they have a couple ticks. But yeah, they tend to be found in Gopher tortoise burrows. Are sort of like in that habitat too. So they're not so much like in what I would call an obligate commensal, which is an animal that's like found only inside of the burrow. But they do tend to be found on Gopher tortoises. So But otherwise,
do you have any interest in studying those at all, or anything that feeds off of the Gopher tortoises?
totally, I would, yeah, I would if I was given the opportunity. I don't know very much about them, so I'd have to like do a little bit more research on them. But yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, what made you go that route instead of just like doing the regular just studying?
I wasn't planning on insects at all. Like that was like I came into this for the herps, and I really wanted to get back with gopher tortoises because I had taken a long break from my undergrad to my master's, and I was just like I really want to get back and working with gopher tortoises. And my advisor just presented this project to me because I didn't really have a project in mind. Like I was like, what about commensals? And he was like, yeah, you should study the insects because nobody's doing them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not interested. And like I like bugs, but like I was not interested in like becoming an entomologist. And I'm really happy that he did present it. Like once I started reading about it, I was just like, this is fascinating and we don't know anything about it. And I think that's what really like spurred my interest was the fact that like people are like, we need people to study this. And I was like, okay, sign me up. So yeah, like, I don't really know how it just kind of fell into my lap. I feel like I got lucky in that sense. Like I got to combine herpetology and entomology and just see how everything's so connected.
Sounds like your job got a lot harder.
What's that?
Sounds like your job got a lot harder, but
yeah. For sure. I don't think I was expecting it. Like I was like, no big deal. I'll get people to help me identify bugs. And then like trying to find people for like each of these different things has been a challenge. But when I do find somebody, they totally geek out about it. And like that's why I love entomologists because they're just pumped. Like everybody is so pumped about like their species. And so it's exciting to like, just meet new people. It's like definitely open the door to like meeting new people and
so everyone you get to help you, they have to be like near you, right, to be able to come in and actually look at the insects themselves.
Yeah, like for some of them, I've actually just been able to send like a microscope picture, and like and those are the easy ones. And other times, like I have to go to them, and luckily, like so far, it's been in Florida, and so I've had to like bring these insects to them and like ID them with them. Yeah, so far that's been it. I might have to, ship off insects somewhere if I can find somebody. So we'll see.
You need to put like a Craigslist ad.
Right? Looking for an entomologist.
Well, when we get,
can I send you bugs, please?
When we get E.O. Wilson on the show, we'll put in a good word.
Right? Okay. Yes.
E.O. Wilson.
But, we have a connect. We have a first level connect. We'll figure it out. Don't tell everyone that.
Okay. Yeah, I want to know who.
The secrets. I don't remember his name, so that's embarrassing. So we won't go there for that simple fact.
Marker Matt. He used to be
Marker Matt.
Didn't he have like on TV?
He had some type of TV show.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
He studied under E.O. Wilson at Harvard, so.
Nice. Okay, so that's a really good connection.
Yeah. So hopefully.
We need to message Craig after this.
There you go. Say it out loud.
See what happens.
Yeah. So is that something that you're interested in going? You said you're applying to jobs now. The bug thing, is that something you're interested in the future?
Yeah, I feel like now because I started this, I don't know, just new like road of like biology. I feel like it just reminded me that I should just keep my options open, and I feel like this is an area that I never thought I'd end up. And so now I'm just like, who knows what's going to happen next? Like, I'm just going to keep an open mind because I fell in love with my project. And so I feel like there's just like so many other options now because I'm like, I know I could really like a lot of anything, any wildlife if I get the opportunity to work with them. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like
you were probably going to ask a very similar question. Go ahead.
No.
Is there an animal that would be like your bucket list type of animal to research?
Oh my gosh, bucket list. It's so weird because I feel like I get this question all the time. We're like, what's your favorite animal? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I have a bucket list. I actually think that if I were, I'd want to move to something big like bears. I would love to work with bears or the Florida panther. Yeah, ultimately, like, I think eventually I'd really like to get into like sort of big picture conservation, especially in Florida, and like just be part of, you know, something that's like working towards, you know, connecting wild Florida and like, yeah, just that's what I would ultimately love to like end up doing, is just something more broad.
So you're really open to everything.
Anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think that as far as conservation goes, I mean, there's not much going on in the reptile front in a sense, as far as the, you know, the charismatic fauna always comes before the, you know, the reptiles and stuff like that. So how can we get people interested in, say, the gopher tortoise? I mean, it seems like you're doing it, you know, but.
I hope I am. I think that's something I've kind of struggled with, just trying to figure out and just experimenting with. And I think you're doing it, you know, and you're doing a great job at it online. And so I think it's like just a lot of, I'm not, you know, there's like this part of me that's like, I'm not really sure if I'm just seeking out the people that are equally interested in something weird. And like, you know, you kind of create your own space and then these people follow. Or if I'm actually getting people truly excited about something that they didn't really care about before. And so I think that's where I'm sort of trying to figure out, you know, what kind of impact have I made, or if I, you know, I'm not really sure. And so I found it really difficult to get people excited about shit bugs, about, you know, just gopher tortoise insects. And so it's really easy it's a lot easier to be able to like hook them with you know, with the gopher tortoise. And so it's like great that I have that connection there, and I can use the gopher tortoise as like, you know, a way to get people excited about. Yeah, exactly. So they're definitely more charismatic than insects. But I don't know. I feel like as far as gopher tortoises, I don't know. I think sharing interesting facts. I think people really love learning about, you know, their social behavior and, you know, and just sharing about their local wildlife. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, I see gopher tortoises all the time, but I had no idea, like, you know, that they shared, you know, so many shared space with so many other animals. And so I think it's really just like teaching them about like local wildlife and, you know, what's around them, and just getting them interested that way.
So speaking of getting the word out, let's talk about like your Instagram and everything in that, and how that all got started.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I've always been really interested in like education. So when I started grad school, I think that's when it really like piqued my interest, where I was like, oh, I really love, I started being a teaching assistant. It was just like general teaching labs in grad school. I love it. I don't know why. I just feel like I loved teaching life science, which is like a science that like most people have to take that aren't going into biology or any sort of sciences. And so they're non-science students. And that to me was so much fun, was like teaching non-science students about science, because it was just fun to get them pumped about something that they weren't initially interested in. And so I think that's where I realized sort of my passion for like education. And then I kind of took it to Instagram and Twitter. And I haven't really been on Twitter as much. I sort of took Instagram as my baby. I just started sharing like my work and my field work. And I don't know, I just really fell in love with like educating. And so that's sort of the route that I want to go. I think now I'm like, things are going to change. I'm going to graduate, and I don't know if I'm going to be working with gopher tortoises anymore, or like what I'm going to be doing. And so we'll see what happens. I don't know.
So, millennial question here. Were you big into Instagram before all of this? Okay.
No, I had it. I was like private up until, it was like a private Instagram up until 2 years ago. And so, yeah, I just used it like for personal stuff. And then once I started like grad school and started realizing that I really wanted to like share my experiences, because I was like, I love natural history and I love wildlife, and I'm like, what's the point if you can't really share it? And so that was like my chance to be like, this is what I've learned. Let me share it with you. So.
And did you expect to have over 10,000 followers?
No, and I actually feel like it's been really hard to like grow a following. But a lot of it's been, I like, sometimes I'm not really sure how. I'm not even sure how it did, but I think like I got a lot of my followers from the Ologies podcast, and so a lot of it has just been like shout outs and help from other people. And so yeah, I don't really know like how how it happened, but I really enjoyed doing it. And so yeah.
I know even like herpers that they're so nervous about sharing locations about where animals are. So what kind of cautions do you take on that front?
Yeah, so I don't post my field site locations because I love doing stories. Like when I was out in the field all the time, I was like trying to share my stories of like my entire field day as a story and just bring people out there with me. But I had to be careful about, location and field sites. So I don't share that. That's something that I don't share. But people know I'm in South Florida, and of course tortoises are found throughout Florida. So yeah, I'm just careful about like sharing location.
And I guess you mentioned this before, but it's kind of hard, especially for us. I feel like we do it a lot. We're like preaching to the choir as far as, we're talking to reptile people about reptiles. So, but I mean, we may be introducing them to gopher tortoises right now when they used to be into just keeping a ball python or something like that. But how do you find new people, and how do you think has been successful as far as finding, new people to educate?
That's a really good question. Like as far as like new people on Instagram?
Yeah, I mean, just in general. Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure you have brush-ins with like the general public who are using those trails that you're researching on and stuff like that even.
Yeah, so whenever I'm giving a talk, I make sure I always have my social media accounts. That's like another way that I've grown following. So especially when I'm giving a talk to like the general public. So I recently had one at MacArthur Beach State Park, and I gained a lot of followers that way. And so that was really cool because it was like non-scientists, and that's like my favorite group of people to talk to. I love talking to non-scientists. And yeah, if I could give talks like all day about my research to like the general public and like just avoid conferences, that would be perfect. But yeah, so that's one way that I've gained a following on Instagram. And then every time I'm out in the field, especially when I'm at my urban site at the Greenway, I always run into people, and people are always asking questions, and so I let them hang out. I've even, people have even like offered to pay me to take them back out in the field and just do like a tour. Like, yeah. So it's been really interesting. Like I did have someone that met me out in the field, and she wanted to bring her friends back out, and so I was like, yeah, sure, like let me know. And she brought a group of people with her, and like they all came out. And so I've done that several times. But yeah, I think that's one of my favorite ways to educate is like actually getting the chance to like let people see what I'm doing, or like let them meet a gopher tortoise. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's like my favorite thing is like bringing people out, and there's like no way of connecting. Like there's like, it's just, I don't know. I really think the best way of connecting people is like actually letting them see, what I'm trying to introduce to them. So
yeah, nothing can replace the real world.
Sure. Exactly.
Well, just the feeling of it. We can hear about it, we can see pictures of it, but we're not experiencing it until we have our own personal experience with it that we can take, and share with other people. Then I think that's how it spreads. Like, yes, we can say like, oh, gopher tortoises need our help. But until you go there and you see like, oh, whoa, this is how it's really happening, then that's when you have that true emotional connection to it. And I think that's when you're going to tell your friends more about it.
For sure. I agree. I think, experience is key. And then, that's another way that you're going to want to share it. For sure. So yeah, I agree.
These talks that you're doing, is it like through the school setting you up, or are you like reaching out to these people randomly emailing you? How's that work?
I've actually, like, most of the time it's people like just looking for talks, like looking for a presenter. And so I've been invited. usually. And yeah, that's like my favorite part. I love getting invited to these things. Yeah.
Are you able to have an animal with you sometimes to present?
I did for once for a kid's science camp. So I was able to like go out and grab some tortoises and like bring them back in. And so yeah, I did for that. That was really fun. So,
And
but not for the actual talks. Like I wish I could have. It would have been really cool to like just go out, grab a tortoise and like bring them back. But
yeah, I'm sure that's kind of frowned upon.
Do schools like
yeah, for sure.
Well, do schools, do universities have their own animals? Is that a thing? It's a silly question.
Yeah. So it's like there are like definitely places that I have contacts with where you can like work with the ambassador animals. And so that's been another way I've been able to introduce students to. And then like in a situation where I was like going out to grab a tortoise, it was like in the same site. Like it was like an education center like at my site. So it wasn't like I was like transporting it or anything. So.
And are people generally, I mean, into it as far as the gopher tortoise? I mean, it's probably an easier sell than a snake, but.
Yeah, I do think it's an easier sell than a snake. Yeah, I think people end up loving tortoises. Like I actually think that it's a pretty easy animal to like introduce people to. People love them. I mean, I get that they are something that's like not, charismatic, but I do feel like it's pretty easy to like get people excited about them.
Yeah, there's never like evil turtles in any movies.
She's been attacked. Gertrude.
She ended up, Bethany Aguilar is a science communicator, and she ended up writing an article because Grumpy Gertrude did attack her, and she got a video of it, like attacking her camera. And so she ended up like posting or publishing something in Nat Geo. So.
Wow, that's crazy.
Grumpy Gertrude now is known worldwide. Don't mess with her.
She's Nat Geo famous for her grumpiness.
Did you see that? Because of course my research consisted mostly YouTube searching Gopher Tortoise. The BBC with David Attenborough, where it looks like this just outrageous robot camera that he brings down a burrow. That seems like the least efficient way to ever get a camera down a burrow, but I'm guessing it's a lot different.
Yeah, and apparently, so somebody I know had actually contacted David Attenborough or the people that were working with him about this camera, because this is like something that people have been working on forever, like trying to like build a camera, a RoboCam. It's something that I did for my undergrad, like working on this like RoboCam that would like go down burrows and like get video footage and like take temperature and humidity and things like that. And so, yeah, that was something that we were working on. And so somebody had contacted him about this camera that he was using, and apparently it was complete BS. Apparently it only worked one time, and after that it like never really worked again. So that was interesting. It would have been really ideal if it did, and if we could, get cameras like that.
It doesn't seem that far-fetched. I guess to do live video feed, it may be a little weird, but he basically like he had this like computer thing that was just huge, and he's like toggling this little switch on it, and it just looked like something that a GoPro could have done if you put it on a stick.
Right.
I guess you have a really long stick. But it seemed also he was like chasing the tortoise with this little robot car. With this like little remote control car.
Seems so effective.
Okay, it's not real. Do you so the video that you do get, you said it's like, I don't know, I guess you have to explain deeper on how it works.
On the camera?
Yeah.
So it's like this really long hose. It's a long scope with a tiny little bulb camera at the end. It's like this big. And it has a light at the end. So like when you send it down, it like does like project a light. And so my cord, I think, is 30 feet long. And it attaches to I don't know anything about like the mechanics of this, but it attaches to like just this like little battery with like a screen. And it works pretty well. It's really difficult to identify some species. Like if I'm looking at a frog, it's not like the quality of the actual like screen isn't very good. And like sometimes I'm able to actually see insects in there, so I can be like, oh, there's moths, but I can't identify, what kind of moths they are just through that. But it's effective. I mean, the thing about this, like sending a camera down a burrow, it's not super effective when it comes to determining what animals are using the burrows. Because snakes or frogs or like all of these other animals, mice, have separate burrows inside of the burrow. And so I've seen snakes go in where I've been like, I saw a coach whip go in. I'm going to scope it and see if I can just get like cool video footage of it. And it was gone. Like the snake was gone. Like it was like definitely in there because I saw it go in, but it couldn't find it with the scope. So
they're just like digging little burrows on the side.
Ones.
Exactly. Yep. So there's a lot of other little burrows, and so like they might have been using there's a mouse, the Florida mouse, is a burrow is a mouse that like only uses gopher tortoise burrows, and so but they have like their own burrows inside of the burrow, and so a lot of other creatures are using those burrows or like digging their own, and so it's like they're gone by the time you send the scope in. Like I would never see a Florida mouse like with a scope, or they're scared, and so they're just taking off. So the most effective thing for like determining commensals, like for determining vertebrates that are using the burrows, is using the actual camera trap on the outside of the burrow, because then they're coming and going.
And you see it all right there.
Yeah.
So wait, now I'm trying to remember. Didn't you say earlier that for something you were doing, you're sticking your hand in those burrows?
Yeah.
And you
I'm
see
sticking like my body
in there, and you're
More
still sticking. Yeah, any of those, and you're still sticking your body in there?
There are rattlesnakes, and I like the snakes. Like I'm always looking first, so I have a really good flashlight, and before I put any limbs or face or anything in there, I am looking really well to see if anything's there. And I've seen rattlesnakes before, and so I'm not just like throwing my limbs in without like knowing what's in there. So I make sure like it's safe. And the one thing that I've actually been afraid of when I'm already in the burrow is black widow spiders. So like I've been in there where I'm like, okay, my head's inside, and then all of a sudden like I can just see like a black widow spider in its web, and so I'm like, oh, okay. But I've never had an issue. I've always been fine.
I'm so out. I will never put any part of my body inside a burrow. No, I feel like I have to tell you that.
Are there, so for a lot of our specifically pine snakes and indigos and stuff like that, they feed a lot off of pocket gophers. Are there pocket gophers also in South Florida and throughout Florida?
That's a good question. They're definitely not at my field site. I've never seen them. And so I don't really think that they're in South Florida, but I could be wrong. I don't know anything.
And it doesn't sound like you have like southern pines in there either.
We have slash pines. Oh, southern pine snakes.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm like, what are you talking about? I've never seen them. We do have pine snakes, but I've never recorded them.
Yeah, because I would think that, because usually, especially in, say the indigos or the Louisiana pines or a lot of the pituophis, they are using those gopher tortoise burrows basically. But it seems like you don't see a lot of that.
Just coach whips and rattlesnakes.
Yeah. I haven't like, I don't know if it's just South Florida. Like, I mean, I work in really good habitat. I don't know if I just haven't gotten lucky, but I haven't recorded any of those really awesome snakes. No pine snakes, no indigos.
So are you sharing this field site with master's students who are doing snake research studies?
I don't know anybody that is, but it's possible. Like not my field site, not the Greenway. But I'm also working at state parks and things like that. So it's possible that there are other students who are doing snake research. I don't know of anyone at FAU at my university that's working with snakes. But yeah, it's possible that other people are. I just don't know of any projects going on.
Yeah, I would think that you would see a lot more snakes.
I know. I thought
I'm bummed. Yeah, the main snakes that I see using burrows are coach whips and black racers. But yeah, I haven't seen. Yeah, I really thought that I'd see I thought that I'd see more diamondbacks, and I have seen them, but I thought I'd see more. I thought that I'd see pine snakes, maybe an indigo. Yeah, none of it.
Weird part of Florida where you're not.
Yeah, it is South Florida, and yeah, it's very developed where I am. So
Where exactly is Florida Atlantic?
it's in Boca.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's north of Miami, south of West Palm.
But it's down there.
Yeah.
Where all the fun stuff is.
Yeah.
So have you actually been able to see a gopher tortoise get basically
Oh no.
have you seen them get eaten, or have you
Um,
lost an animal that you had some sort of attachment to?
so yes, I've never seen one get eaten. I have seen some from my field site actually get run over, like when I've pulled over to try and like move it across the road and I was too late. So that's happened before. But I have lost a hatchling. I've lost many hatchlings. Like where I can find at my field site, it's when you're out there working all the time, it's hard to find hatchling burrows, but when you do, it's like really exciting. And so I'm always keeping an eye on it and like always checking on it. And most of them don't make it. And so it's just kind of expected. You don't get attached, but you still check and you record, and you see these hatchlings sometimes out grazing. And so it's pretty exciting when you do find like a tiny little baby. And then you're keeping an eye on it for weeks and weeks, and then all of a sudden it's gone and you're like, okay. And you can tell it's been dug out by something. And so there was one that I had been keeping an eye on. It was just a yearling. It was a really small one when I first saw it. And then I was keeping an eye on it for like a year. And I was like, it's going to make it. It's like getting big. I could see it like growing, and we were measuring it every couple months. And then like one day it was just like the burrow was gone, completely dug out. It looked like it had been dug out by a coyote. So yeah, that was kind of a bummer because I was like I gotten attached to that one. It was one, I had kind of like had a rough start. So since these tortoises are sort of like pushed out to the trails, there's the trails get mowed every couple weeks with just a lawnmower. And so they're hard to see, those tiny little burrows. And so the person who had been mowing the lawn ran over the burrow. And so it had completely like smushed the burrow. And luckily the tortoise wasn't in it. It was outside, but he looked a little lost, and it had like just happened. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to like dig out this burrow for it and just kind of redug it for him. And he used it, and he used it again for like months and months. And then all of a sudden, like one day it was just gone. Like, ugh.
So you had personally had your hand in helping it out.
Yeah, exactly. And then just constantly keeping an eye on it to make sure it didn't happen again, or like flagging the burrow and, letting the lawnmower guy know there's a burrow right here. Yeah, so it's nature.
Estimates as far as how many survive, to see 1 year or maturity even? So
it's, like 0.001 or something that survived to maturity. So it's really low. It's, below zero.
Are females reproducing year after year, or are they taking years off?
So we think that they're either reproducing every year, maybe reproducing every other year. But we're not really sure. Like, it's possible that they're double clutching. It's possible that they might be like laying twice in a year, kind of like sea turtles, where they would lay potentially twice and then not lay again for a couple of years. But we haven't studied gopher tortoises that long to really know, much. And so I don't think that's something that we know yet. So
see, another thing you could study forever.
Yeah, there's a lot we have left to learn. So
are there job opportunities out there to do that?
I think that's a really good question. as far as like actually paid opportunities, I'm not sure. It's nothing that I've found yet, because that would be awesome. There are definitely like grad student opportunities to be able to study those things, but as far as jobs, I'm not sure.
Like the money's probably more in the bears and
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
What is anything as far as your take on the wildlife in general in Florida? I mean, how do you feel about all the craziness and the
invite us to
invasives?
Amanda's TED Talk about Florida wildlife.
So your question is like if in the field?
Yeah, and what do you feel like, especially invasive seems so prevalent down there in South Florida?
Invasive species. Oh gosh. Yeah, it's tough. Like I do feel like the people that are working on invasive species I don't envy their job. I think it's a really tough job to do, but it's something that has to happen. I think that the removal of the invasive species is really important. It does have an impact. So we even have invasive animals that are using gopher tortoise burrows. And so sometimes they're, even just things like red invasive fire ants that could, like they might build their nests in the burrow aprons, and that's where gopher tortoises lay their nests. And so when they hatch, they tend to like the hatchlings, so they will eat hatchlings. Or other things like the tegus are also using burrows. So yeah, it's an issue not only for gopher tortoises, but for a lot of other native wildlife. So I think it's really important that we do manage invasive species. Yeah.
Do you see any? I mean, especially the tegus seem super destructive, but have you seen any within the areas that you're studying?
I haven't seen any tegus. I have seen, I know that they're there. I don't think that the tegus are at my field sites, but I've seen a lot of other invasive lizards. So things that I've recorded have been like night anoles and curly tail lizards. Greenhouse frogs are common ones that are using burrows, but things that I'm seeing, a lot of iguanas. Green iguanas, and I feel like there's just so many that it's like crazy. Like Cuban frogs. I don't know. There's so many that I feel like it's like mostly what I see, like most of the wildlife that I see in my area. At my home where I grew up, now, like it used to be green tree frogs and green anoles and things like that, and now that's like very rarely what I'm seeing. Like now it's just like Cuban anole or Cuban frogs, brown anoles.
It's crazy that just in our lifetime how much it's changed. Like
just like really
yeah.
In a couple of years, like when I lived in Colorado and I was like just visiting, I was like, I could already see like the change. Like I was like, I'd never see green tree frogs anymore. And like now it's mostly like a lot of cane toads. Like it's crazy. So that's mostly the wildlife that I see in my backyard. It's pretty frustrating to see that change.
And that
change is like quick. Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should be working on the removal, and so I think it's important to, know what these animals look like and be able to identify them, and I think that it's okay. It's learn how to maybe humanely euthanize them. So
is that something that you have to do if you find them at your field site?
Yeah, it's something that we do. Yes.
Mm.
So, and I do express like that it does need to be humane. I feel like there are also animals that need to be treated with kindness, and it's not their fault they're here. But we do want to like preserve, as a conservationist, I think it's important to like preserve the natural habitat. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And what the hell, you were going to say something?
I was not.
Oh, sorry. So when you are in the field and doing everything, I mean, what are the things that you most like to see besides tortoises? That could be anywhere
the things that I'm most sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah. As besides Gopher Tortoises, what are your favorite things to see?
Oh, my favorite things to see. This like I don't know. I feel like it's like it changes every single day. I love seeing coyotes. I really love coyotes. I love seeing bobcats. And I love seeing diamondback rattlesnakes. I think those are like my top three. Yeah, snakes for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think those are my top three. I see coyotes pretty frequently, and I hear them really frequently, and so I really love seeing them. I think they're really cool.
Yeah,
I think go ahead. Sorry.
someone just posted. I don't know if you saw. Someone got a picture of a Florida panther recently in Florida.
I've never seen one. I would love to see one. I've never seen one in the wild, and that would be a dream come true for me to see one.
How rare would that be to see one?
It's extremely rare. They're so secretive, and they do not want anything to do with people, and so yeah, it would be extremely rare to see a Florida panther. I mean, there's people that work with them, and very rarely or maybe never see them in the wild.
Yeah, what does work with them mean? Does that mean like setting up a trail camera? Is there anything
Yeah,
you
most
do
people
other than that?
yeah, that's pretty much as close as most people will get to them is trail camera photos. So, and they're not at my field site, so I don't think that there's really a chance for me to see them or catch them on my trail cameras. But gosh, that would be a dream. That would be awesome.
And are they mostly in the Everglades?
Yeah, so they're mostly in the Everglades, and they do travel further north. I think that they even found one like more in North Florida, maybe Ocala. I could be wrong, but I do feel like it's probably not as common for them to be up there. But yeah.
Sorry, we just had to
That's
change
okay.
the sound. We have been not using our mics the whole time. So
What was it on? Was it on?
Oh,
it was on the computer.
I was wondering. Okay.
It still works, but it
oh
doesn't.
no. I heard you fine.
So now we sound better. Sorry, guys. This is only episode 100 and something. But we'll make
Well,
it.
it's like we can't hear when we
Yeah.
sound bad. But
Maybe
whatever.
we can. Whatever. So, other Florida stuff. Do you plan on continuing to research it? I mean, do you want to stay in Florida?
I would like to stay in the Southeast, but not necessarily Florida. I just really like the habitat of like the coastal plains in the Southeast, and so yeah, if I could, I don't know, somewhere in the Southeast. But honestly, I'm open to anywhere. I like if I found a really cool job like out west, heck yeah. Yeah, I don't really especially love cold weather, so somewhere that I can stay warm most of the year.
And you said your family is in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so actually my parents are in Florida, but I do have family in Puerto Rico. So, yeah.
Oh, so you are just a warm weather person.
I am. I grew up in the warm weather, and I want to stay in the warm weather.
And luckily, all the cool stuff likes the warm weather too. So you get to study the cool stuff.
Exactly.
Is there anywhere though that you want to travel that you haven't?
I don't even know how to answer this question because I feel like I want to go everywhere.
Yeah.
I think the top of my list right now is probably seeing the Amazon. I think that would definitely be on the top of my list. And I haven't been to Costa Rica, and I'd love to go to Costa Rica. Really anywhere in Central and South America. But also I would love to go to Alaska. And I don't know. The Swiss Alps. I will go anywhere.
So would that be like for obviously Costa Rica has such a density of reptiles and amphibians, but Alaska I'm assuming would be bears. So would that be just to see animals, or are you interested in the culture as well?
Oh, I'm interested in everything. I love learning about culture every time I go somewhere, and so that's probably yeah, food is like top priority. Food and culture, and then animals.
What's the food in Alaska?
I don't know. I don't know. Salmon? I don't know.
Seal fat, normal delicacies.
I think Costa Rica is probably the best spot. Then good food and,
Yeah,
you would
and
just
animals.
have to, but if you're out in the field, you just have to eat rice and beans or something.
I could eat rice and beans every day.
That's basically what I eat every day.
Same.
It's like totally a Puerto Rican dish, so I'm like rice and beans is like what I live off of. So
Yeah.
perfect. Change it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's crazy how like I remember just talking to people who've gone on expeditions, and the amount of people that have survived on just rice is alarming.
Yeah.
Like they
so
literally just take out rice and beans, and you can survive for a very, very long time.
That's like, so in Madagascar, that's basically what we had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Rice and beans every single day, 3 meals. Like breakfast was taking rice and like making it really mushy and maybe putting a little bit of sugar in it or honey. And that was your breakfast. And then lunch and dinner were like rice and beans, just that. And that's what I had for 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how does it feel after 4 months?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I came
there?
back and I just like ate everything. I was like, I want like freezer pizza. Like, I don't even care. Just
Hamburgers.
right, mac and cheese. Yeah, I pretty much just ate everything when I came back. It's like even just like desserts, I was like, I want something like sweet, you know.
Everything you couldn't have while you were there.
So true.
And we often ask people who have traveled a lot, or just guests in general, have you eaten it? What's the weirdest thing you've eaten?
The weirdest thing I've eaten. I don't know if I've done anything super crazy, but I've eaten a lot of bugs, roaches, and
prepared or just straight up?
Yeah, no, prepared. I don't think I'm
just wondering.
I don't know.
Did you
maybe
eat the roaches in Madagascar.
Okay. Yeah, and Thailand. Thailand had some good roaches. Thailand was good because like they would actually, they had really good spices with their insects, and so like I actually thought they prepared it really well.
Okay, that's something I never thought I'd hear. Good insect spice. Okay.
It was like, I don't know. Sometimes it'd be like cooked with like fried in like curry, and I don't know. It was actually pretty good. Just like remove the legs. It's not too bad.
Is it just something to where you just keep it out of your mind that you're eating a bug?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I don't know if it really bothered me, like that it was, I don't know.
I would just think like the exoskeleton and little legs get stuck in your teeth, and it just sounds disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really, like, you remove the legs. They mostly remove the legs. So I don't know. I didn't really think that it was that big of a deal.
You've never eaten any sort of insect?
I don't know. I think I may have eaten like cricket protein. Like I had a cricket protein bar, but that was like it's very first world preparation, right?
Yeah,
not exactly.
Yeah,
I went to like the insectarium and had like
me too. In Louisiana.
Oh,
I love it.
Wait, you've been there?
Explain. What's
that was like my favorite place.
We literally loved it so much that was it senior year of high school, we had to take a science class and we were done with all our main ones. So I took environmental science. Sorry for environmental science out there. That was such a bullshit class.
I took
it. Was the most
was AP.
It was there was an AP option. I wasn't going to do that.
I don't know.
It was the most bullshit class ever. But because I love the insectarium so much, I convinced our teacher to take us as 17 and 18-year-old people to the insectarium for a field trip.
For children?
It's definitely for children. It surely is. But I loved it. And it's just, I don't know, it's all about bugs. And they have this little 4D theater.
You learn about them and then you eat them?
And then and then they have a butterfly place in there and you get to like the greenhouse and everything. And it's just, I thought everyone knew what an insectarium is. I assumed every place has that.
But yeah.
It's literally like a zoo of insects. It was, I don't know, I thought it was really cool.
And I hate bugs, but like, I don't know, it was really cool. And then I ate a chocolate covered cricket, I guess, or whatever. And they have like lollipops with bugs in them and everything.
Yeah, they had like cookies with like a cricket on top.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then they had a salsa, like a mango chutney salsa.
I remember that.
It was so good though.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was actually good.
It had like mealworms in it. It was like interesting.
I don't know, the insect area is cool.
I would try them all, I suppose.
I mean, it doesn't taste like a bug. Like
It really doesn't. It's just the thought of it. It's like in your head, but I don't know. It doesn't taste bad.
I guess we could much more efficiently eat crickets than we could, cows or something. It's a lot easier to reproduce a cricket with a lot less environmental impact.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm gonna go pick one up and eat it, but when you cover it in chocolate
or if you fry it and
put some good spices on it in Thailand, then
we're talking.
That should be your new business venture, Amanda, getting the insect spices to America.
Seriously. Yeah. I think it's like literally just like curry powder, but
it's not like you're going to be Columbus going there.
I don't know.
For the Indies to pick up spices.
Who knows what they have in Thailand?
You have the internet and transportation.
I mean, if I type in insect spices Thailand, I don't think I'm going to find it.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Chili powder, some pepper.
Curry powder. Who knows?
Oh my gosh.
But it has been our 2 hours, but our actual last question we usually ask people is, if someone wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way they could get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when people do. Well, they can find me on Instagram as BiophiliaAmanda. Or they can, and I'm also on Twitter, the same handle. Or they can send me an email to amandahips, and it's the number 4 @gmail.com.
Sweet.
So always feel free. I'm here.
And if anyone wants to reach out to us, as always, Portcitypythons on Instagram, Facebook, not Twitter.
We have a Twitter,
don't talk. We're not going to answer you on it.
I just answered some tweets from like 4 months ago that I didn't know that I got.
Yeah, again, don't message us on Twitter. Instagram, Facebook. We're not getting the stupid MeWe stuff I've been seeing around. I don't even know what MeWe is, but we're not doing it. It's like the new Facebook, and it makes
I want to talk about that, but it's going to be a loaded conversation.
Oh God. Okay, maybe we'll have to do a separate podcast about whatever the Facebook MeWe drama is. But okay. Back to what I was saying. Contact Portcitypythons on Instagram, Facebook. Our website, portcitypythons.com. Our email is...
And buy a shirt, portcitypythons.com.
Cool.
Proceeds go to OCSC.
Email is theportcitypythons@gmail.com.
Do we have any things?
Yeah, that's it, right? We will see you guys next week. I don't know.
Yes, we will.
I don't know what
talking about the Facebook apocalypse.
Oh, well, okay.
No, I don't know. We'll probably have an actual show. But thank you, Amanda, for hanging out with us and educating us about the Gopher Tortoise. And other than that, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch you later.
Amanda, we're still going to be on once we go off live.
Don't let me touch the wrong button.
No, wait.
No?
That one.
Oh, yeah.